Hello, Looney listeners. You're listening to episode 188 of Into the Night, a Moon Knight podcast. I'm one of your hosts, Ray.
And I'm your other host, Connor, and just on the 188, it's an explosive week with an all-new creative team announced, a Defenders release, a Moon Knight reading list, and our regular reviews with issue 3 of Jeff Lemire, Greg Smallwood, and Geordie Blair's most recent run on Moon Knight, and Marvel Fanfare 30. So grab 8 issues, sit back, relax, and get your concho on.
Okay, Loonies, I tell a little fib. This isn't episode 188. It is actually episode 3 of Into the Night. But yes, as Connor mentioned, we do have some big news today. But anyway, we'll get to that. First of all, Connor, how are you going?
Well, I haven't been too bad. I'm still making my way through assignments, so my week's been pretty quiet outside of absolutely binging the Defenders. What about you, Ray? I think you had an even bigger week.
Oh yeah, just had a really fun-filled week. Actually, I'm on holidays for the next week, so I'm pretty stoked about that. But just have some fam here at the moment, so I've been really enjoying their time. I've let them know about our little podcast, so they're actually in the next room. They know that we're recording this as we speak. So I'd like to give a little shout out to Nora and Thomas. And they leave early tomorrow morning. So we've been out. We went to Bondi, Coogee today, 2 beaches in Sydney. We bought more fish for the aquarium.
Any more recommendations of Deadpool books from?
I know, different pet store. So I don't think she was really clued into the comics world. But finally, as well, just yesterday, Thomas and myself. We thought we'd get back into a bit of exercise, and Thomas is let's just say he's kind of built like a superhero already. He actually trains people to go into the army and the police. Wow. Police academy.
Teaching Mark Spector.
So he's pretty much close to Mark Spector as I can get. But anyway, he put me through the ringer, so my arms are just my arms are jelly at the moment still. Stiff and like jelly, if that makes sense. So, fun-filled week. But anyway, Loonies, thank you for joining us again. We have a lot to unpack, so let's just get straight into it. Connor, we've got big news, which occurred a few days ago.
Yeah, well, I think it was about 5 o'clock on a Friday morning that the big news dropped. Our creative team for the new Moon Knight 188 coming out in November from Marvel has been announced, with writer Max Bemis and artist Jason Burrows on Crazy Runs in the Family, parts 1 and 2 coming out in November.
Yeah, exactly. 188 and 189, they were advertising it, hence the altered introduction today. But yeah, Max Bemis, known for basically Fool Killer, that I know, and The Worst X-Men Ever. You've read both of them, right?
I've read all of Worst X-Men and the first issue of Fool Killer. And actually, he's done a few other works such as Crossed, Badlands, Evil Empire, and Polarity. One of the other series I've read a bit of, it's coming out at the moment, is Centipede at Dynamite, a weird book based on that old Atari game.
Oh, okay.
Which has been kind of a hit, yeah.
Yeah, trying to flesh that out. And so how do you find his writing? Like, do you reckon he's appropriate or suitable for Moon Knight?
That's really tough. He's done a lot of really small stuff, so I guess this is his big break, as he's talked about. So, I mean, I really like his writing. He's for someone pretty new to comics. He writes in the comic book format really well, but yeah, I've loved his books, but they don't even sort of set you up for what to expect from Moon Knight.
Yeah, I only managed to. I was trying to read all of Fool Killer on Marvel Unlimited. I couldn't get through it just because we had some fam over and stuff. But I was quite impressed with how he wrote it. Fool Killer is quite an interesting character anyway, and I guess you can draw some parallels between, I guess, Fool Killer and Moon Knight. He seemed to handle that pretty well. I found the writing exactly as you say. It was very, very kind of tailored for comic books, which is surprising to hear that he's not not traditionally or hasn't been in the game for that long. Another thing I heard about him is a lead singer of a band as well, Say Anything. So I don't know. I'll be checking that out on Spotify. Yeah, have you heard of it? The band?
No, not till this announcement. I already forgot because I'm real bad. But yeah, how long have they been running for? Formed in 2000.
Wow. Okay, well, they've got to be pretty polished. I'm going to check them up on Spotify, see if they're any good. But let's just say this announcement with Moon Knight has got me really interested in reading and catching up on Max Bemis' stuff. Jason Burrows as well, I'm not familiar with at all. I know he does, apparently, from the article that we've read, and we'll post that up on our show notes. He's done a lot of horror work, and he's co-created Crossed with Garth Ennis, is that correct?
Yeah, which is a very, very horrific, gross book about people turning violently evil and rapists. And, like, imagine The Walking Dead, but instead of zombies, it's just terrible people.
Oh, is this the one, this is just off the top of my head, is this the one that was really, 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 really violent? There was something going on in one of the Facebook
Yeah,
groups
like, just some of the worst I've probably ever seen.
Ah, wow. I wonder if you'll take that over to Moon Knight, which, after seeing Houston's run and Ellis's and Bunn's, it's, it wouldn't be out of the ordinary for there to be quite a violent take on Moon Knight.
Yeah, well, I mean, like Bemis, he's done Cross Badlands, but that was over at Avatar Press. He hasn't really broken into the mainstream yet. He also did a book called Providence, which I haven't read, but it's fairly recent. Yeah, with Alan Moore in 2015.
Right, okay. So not that long ago. And he's the guy that's, like what you see on the article, the front cover, that's Jason Burrows, I'm imagining.
Yeah, that's his art, which is an incredible cover with the Eye of Horus burnt into a building.
Yeah, so I mean, if we go into, the article as well, it's quite a lengthy one, which is really great. I spent a good few minutes just pouring through this article. It's great to see that, the front cover, number 188. There's a bit of contention as to the numbering. I know a couple of loonies on our Facebook group have said shouldn't it be 195, I think they're thinking, because they're including Resurrection Wars and High Strangeness. But I guess if they were like intended miniseries, you don't have to include them. But the cover looks awesome, and I'm just looking at it now. It's got I think as one of our other loonies, Adam, stated, it's got the old-fashioned Moon Knight font, which is really cool. And it's got the big bad standing on top of a building opposite from Moon Knight in flames. So there's a lot of speculation as who this big bad will be. It's been described as being the Joker, the equivalent of being the Joker, what the Joker is to Batman. So this is going to be quite an interesting development, I think, in the story. It seems that, we've kind of left Lemire's great run behind, and I'm sure a lot of it's taken on board, but it looks like Max Bemis is kind of taking it into another direction.
Yeah, well, just to read out the solicitation as we get into our discussion, it reads, a new day is dawning, and with it comes an enemy unlike any that Mark Spector, Moon Knight, has ever faced. Moon Knight has always been a protector from the shadows, but this new enemy is looking to extinguish that shadow with blinding light and fire. Get ready for the introduction of Moon Knight's greatest nemesis.
That's awesome. And from our Facebook group discussions as well, I think it was Tommy who may have suggested it might be Horus, like the sun god.
Yeah, he talked about in Egyptian mythology, Horus is sometimes Khonshu's mother, sister, or consort, and saying that maybe his new arch nemesis is a relative from the Overvoid from Lemire's run, which was a sort of included all of Egyptian mythology as like another reality of the gods.
Yeah, it was a nice touch. It's a very, very interesting take. Also, if we go through the article as well, they obviously ask first to Max, is he a big fan? And it's always comforting as a fan to know that the writer says basically, yep, he's a big fan. He actually started with the Houston and Finch run, and he really loved it. But yeah, he just feels honoured, and I think any writer and artist, because there've been a great lineup of artists and writers throughout Moon Knight's history. So he's the next in line. He's got a lot on his shoulders, a lot of expectations, I think.
Yeah, he talks about a lot about following on from something crazy like Ellis and Lemire, and that he's really sort of loved what they've done, but he's going to take sort of a whole new approach while respecting everything they've sort of built up.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he cites Bendis as well, saying Bendis is very Bendisy and amazing, and Ellis is very Warren Ellis. And then he mentions also, because actually we coincidentally discussed this in our previous episode, Connor, about there being comedic writers on and what our thoughts were there. He actually he states that if you're a fan of dark Coen Brothers type comedy, there's going to be some of that. So, although I said I wasn't too keen on comedic writers, I think I'd be on board with this. How about you?
Yeah, he sort of compared it to a Lynchian Fargo West sort of writing, relating a lot to Grant Morrison and sort of that sort of very dark humor. And I mean, last week I said, I didn't want that, but if you read the rest of the article, you see it. It's kind of what you want. It's the way he sort of set it up, and he's not saying it's a comedy book; it's just sort of part of it.
Yeah, a bit of dark humor. It's not too bad. I mean, like, it's not going to be overblown. It's not going to be what I assume the worst ever X-Men was. Right? That was pretty much a comedy, wasn't it?
Yeah, that was 100%. In the comedy genre.
Because Fool Killer was, to me, it had its quirks, I thought, which was good. It wasn't overall funny, which I found was good as well, because you're dealing with a bit of a weirdo himself, and he's dealing with people that are kind of he's evaluating. So there is a fine line. There is, I do see the tinge of comedy that Bemis can do, but as long as it's not too over the top, I think he can do it really. I think it will do real well for Moon Knight, and especially he cites also stuff like the Coen Brothers' Fargo, I guess. And David Lynch, who I think is just brilliant as well. If he can do something like David Lynch, I will be over the moon, no pun intended. But so he goes on just to talk about his stuff, and then they talk more about, they go into Jason Burrows' work, which was with Garth Ennis. They say that he kind of is reminiscent of Steve Dillon, which I think is a great thing as well. To me, his art reminds me, from only what I've seen from the front cover and the back, but just the way he kind of etches the detail, he reminds me a little bit of Juan Jose Rip, but I don't think he's probably going to be at that level. So Rip is a current artist with Valiant Comics. He did the Britannia series with with Nero, very highly detailed, a little bit like Crumb, kind of that underground work. That's what I'm kind of getting from Burrows' title, front cover. But what do you reckon of his art?
Okay, yeah, so I sort of see it very much as Juan Jose Rip. Is that how you say his name? Maybe?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Mixed with a bit of Declan Shalvey. It's sort of kind of mixing the very sort of distinct, clear images of Rip and sort of the very stylized version of Shelby, and sort of very much makes it its own. But that was the first thing I saw, as you can see, sort of the big night sky and what he's clinging to.
I wonder, because we discussed a lot with Lemire's run and Smallwood, and we still will, about how the layouts are just really well thought out and kind of quite innovative. I wonder if Bemis and Burrows will kind of bring that to the new title as well.
Yeah, well, he in the interview sort of talks a lot about, what is it, the first issue was very much just sort of crazy out there and, completely trippy. So I think at the very least, we're not expecting something very plain from these two. I think they've got something big in store that'll just sort of shake up everything.
Yeah, I can't wait. It's going to be interesting as well because they hadn't, I don't think, let me just check, they hadn't also mentioned the colorist. Oh, he's here, the colorist as well, Jason Burrows, because it's got AC for him. So
that's artist and cover artist, I think.
Okay. Oh, okay.
Oh, I don't.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't know.
Well, that probably makes sense. I wonder who the colorist will be because Geordie Belair did a fantastic job with Moon Knight previously, and that really added to it. So with this whole trippy thing that Bemis is doing, I wonder if they'll get, be inspired by a lot of, I don't know, cosmic or psychedelic colors.
Yeah. Let me just pull up. Yeah, he talks a lot about very much the cosmic craziness, and he talks a lot about where Lemire left off actually when it comes to sort of seeing where we're going to go with this, and talking about the mystical or being a figment of the imagination, sort of about talking about the mystical and magical side of craziness and the cosmic realm of dreams. So you'd want to hope for a good colorist.
Colorist, yeah, definitely. And then, they go on to trying to tease out this new villain that they're going to try and introduce. There really isn't much to go on in the article, but, there are a few hints. So he talks about he's kind of following what Alan Moore or Grant Morrison writes about, basically chaos versus order. So you can pretty much see, okay, we've got Moon Knight, we've got night versus day, basically. So I can see how it might, and obviously the Eye of Horus as well. That's the big giveaway. It looks like, it'll kind of delve into the mythical realm of Egyptian, gods. I think that would be pretty cool. But we haven't actually seen. We don't know. I don't. What do you reckon this villain will be like? Will he be a really powerful sun god, or will he be kind of like the Human Torch, where he's literally, just raises the temperature and can cast light on? I don't know. What do you reckon?
Yeah, there's absolutely nothing to go off. He sort of talks about the character type where he talks about, between Moon Knight and this new villain's struggle between good and evil, and that he feels like Moon Knight, sort of an unhinged person, avatar on the mood, avatar of zaniness and creativity, while this villain is very much completely sterilized and conformist and wanting to create. He seems to mention creating a perfect society without any that's completely uniform. So I think he's going to be very powerful. Just to.
Do you reckon? I think maybe he might take the corporate angle. From the sounds of it, he seems to be very ordered, as opposed to the chaos. He could be kind of like a Norman Osborn type. Pulling the strings on a corporate level to change the world, and maybe behind that as well, he's really powerful as well. He can take on Moon Knight. But I wonder if he's going to be sterile, in that sense.
Yeah, I'd really like that because we could see a lot more from Stephen Grant as well if he.
Yeah, good point.
If he sort of gets a bigger role here.
And Bemis, sorry, Connor?
Oh, yeah, you go on.
Oh, no, I was about to say, and Bemis talks about his own mental issues. So I just also wonder as well whether we'll see a lot of interplay between Moon Knight's personalities. Lemire in the previous run, he did it so well, and you saw it with the different artists to kind of display the different personalities. He kind of really fleshed that out. I wonder if Bemis will kind of focus on that aspect as well.
Yeah, well, I think going from Lemire was always my worry that everything Lemire set up in that line would sort of be crushed for a new writer who maybe didn't get it as much. But when he was sort of quizzed about it, he talked about how Jeff basically left him okay with who he was and his split personalities and being okay with that. Talked about there's more interesting stories that come out after grappling with your demons, about figuring out what's ahead of you and how to live with your demons once you've beaten them. And Max Beam himself is someone who suffers from mental illnesses, and he talks about, I think, being bipolar and breaks from reality. So
Yeah.
I think there's a lot he can bring into his writing with that.
Yeah, that'll be very, very interesting to see his take on Moon Knight with that kind of added, I guess, knowledge or experience in that sort of thing. He also talks about. Actually, I was just thinking he kind of makes a lot of parallels, and he keeps on mentioning Grant Morrison as well. And I can't help but feel that the parallels between Moon Knight and Batman are continuing. Like, did you get that?
Yeah.
As much as as we like to see that, no, he's nothing like Batman. The parallels are always drawn between them. So I found that a little funny in the article. But overall, it's a fantastic read. So we'll put it up on our show notes. Any other points, Connor, that you wanted to raise from the article?
Yeah, I think you Looney listeners know we're totally on board with this, and we won't just want to recap the article, give that a read as we put in the show notes, and you can dig into that yourself. But I think one of the last points I want to make is really interesting, that Jason Burrows and Max Beamer have gone back to the original Moon Knight costume instead of the sort of black and white one Ellis debuted. As you can see on the cover, it's very traditional, very
very white. It actually even misses out on the not only the Mr. Knight suit, but the black and white armor, which is the current Hasbro toy figure.
With Marvel Legends.
Marvel Legends. Yeah, so it seems like he's going all white again. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, as long as he doesn't drop Mr. Knight, I'm okay with this. This costume, I think it's very much maybe just what Jason Burrows wants to draw, but it's kind of ties into the whole thing with Marvel Legacy about taking everyone back to their roots and what made them them.
Yeah, I don't mind it at all. I wouldn't mind seeing Mr. Knight back. Perhaps almost as the fifth personality.
Yeah, for sure.
For Moon Knight, but being a like in the classics as well, and being at Legacy, I would like to see the old classic Moon Knight costume used as the basis for his whole kind of personality. But I think it looks awesome. I cannot wait, and I'm sure all the loonies out there can't wait as well. It's released in November, so we've got a while to go. And Connor, I noticed you commented on it's potentially is a bi-monthly.
Yeah, well, at the very least, this is solicitations for November that they've sort of been announcing through different publishers, so CBR, Bleeding Cool, what have you. And they made specific mention in the solicitation that it's 188, 189. So at least I think for sure, it's either bi-monthly or what they did with Moon Knight, where we get 2 issues this month and then it goes to monthly. But I mean, as long as the quality keeps up, I'm quite happy with the bi-monthly Moon Knight.
Yeah, me too. I mean, the more the better, but as you say, the quality, I reckon, hopefully will be maintained. So even if it goes to a monthly, I'll be happy with that, and just have parts 1 and 2 come out bi-monthly just to begin with. I think that would be great.
Yeah, I think that sort of shows that this first issue will kind of maybe do something very crazy that will just completely shock the status quo, and then we get sort of like the story beats in the second issue of the month, as sort of a not having to wait and lose readers off that first issue. Yeah. No, I'm very excited.
And it kind of makes sense. Yeah. As long as...
as long as they keep Mr. Knight was all. That's my main thing. If I lose him, I'll be very disappointed.
I think he's been quite popular, so I'm sure he'll show up every now and again. As we covered last episode, he's in Daredevil. Not Daredevil. He's in Deadpool kills the Marvel Universe again, so he'll be around, I reckon. Yeah, which is pretty cool in some way or another. So Loonies, please check it out. Coming November, have a read of this article. Let us know what you think. And we'll just have to play the waiting game again now.
Yeah. So moving on from our Moon Knight announcement, we've had a bit of our own announcement that came out this Tuesday. Ray, would you like to tell our Looney listeners about Over the Moon?
Sure. So with our Facebook group prior to the podcast been created, we had like a very informal kind of reading club, which we called Over the Moon, and basically it was based on, we'd set particular issues or particular arcs up for discussion, classic tales, and then kind of discuss it either in our chat room, the Looney Bin, or either on the Facebook group itself. We've kind of tweaked that a little, and since we've got the podcast running, I wanted to keep the Over the Moon thing happening. So what will happen every Tuesday evening Australian time, which will probably mean early Tuesday for UK listeners or US listeners, we'll release a little newsletter through WordPress. So if you can subscribe to our WordPress blog site, that would be great. And so every Tuesday we'll set basically the 2 issues that we'll be reviewing in the up and coming podcast. So we sent our first one last Tuesday night, and it was for the 2 issues that we'll be reviewing today, which is Lemire's issue number 3 and Marvel Fanfare number 30. So it kind of gives the idea was it will give time for the loonies on the page if you want to read up on those issues and drop us a line of any of your comments or feedback for those issues. So that's up and running, and we'll hope to get that out at the same time. Again, we are a little late in broadcasting this podcast just because of both Connor and I's commitments, but it shouldn't be too long. So I think we generally try and get this podcast out on Sunday night Australian time, in which case it will probably come out about mid-Monday. So not too late, but we'll get the Over the Moon coming shortly after that. And yeah, please, if you have any comments on those issues that we will be doing, comment, can you let the listeners know which issues we'll be doing next week?
All right, next week we got the 4th issue of Jeff Lemire's Moon Knight, our most recent run, and we'll be going back with the classic throwback issue with the Moon Knight and appearing in another series. We'll be covering the Invincible Iron Man 161, which is on Marvel Unlimited for any subscribers there.
Excellent, yeah, because I think we may have made a little error with Marvel Fanfare 30, because I noticed that isn't readily available on Marvel Unlimited. So we'll try to review at least some issues that you can easily get your hands on. So if you do have Marvel Fanfare 30, then great stuff. But yeah, for future reads, we'll try and keep it quite accessible for everyone. So yeah, they both sound like good ones, and that was posted up by, I think, Joey on the Facebook group of ours. He posted up a cover of Invincible Iron Man 161. Looked quite interesting, and Connor and I just thought, yep, why not? Let's give that a go for next week. So that will be up for next week. So anyway, without any further ado, let us dive into our issues for this week.
All right, so 3rd issue of Jeff Lemire's Greg Smallwood and Geordie Blair's Moon Knight. Welcome to New Egypt, Part 3. Released June 1st, 2016. And with a absolutely gorgeous cover with that classic, chalk-like white that blends into the white background of a mummy wrapped in his white bandages.
Yeah, I love the texture, and it's a carry-on definitely from the last page reveal of issue 2. It's what I really love about these covers is that it's quite simple. Again, just black and white, but the texture is just fantastic, as you mentioned, like the charcoal, and definitely it could be t-shirt worthy, I reckon.
I think any of these covers could be.
Yeah, definitely. I hope We Love Fine, which is a t-shirt printing company, WeLoveFine.com. I hope they re-release it in some capacity, or I hope the Moonlight Legacy throws up some really good covers as well, because I'd be keen to get one of them if they do release it.
All right, so following directly on from issue 2 with an escape of Mark Spector as Mr. Knight, Gina, Crawley, Frenchie, and Marlene. They escape to the subway where they discover mummies, where in their desperate escape they have to face these mummies, which may or may be mummies or just the asylum's wards. So, as they make their desperate escape, they fend off baddie after baddie, only to find themselves on the edge of the other void, With a need to escape, who better to show up than Anubis himself, allowing crossing from safety with the cost of a single soul, which is kind of a lot. Not just single, that makes it sound smaller. It's kind of a lot. It's like one person's whole soul.
Yeah, it is a lot. Yeah.
And as they make their way to the other side, they realize all they have achieved is making it back to a apocalyptic New York covered in sand and flying jackals.
Yeah, that wraps up the pitch pretty well. It's another great issue, I think. And again, Lemire does not let up with this. Again, fantastic art, as usual. But what were your main aspects for this, Connor?
All right, I'd just like to start off with one of the big things I noticed this first page. It's you have to get your fight on from almost only a couple of one pages in the previous issues. We get the first 3 pages of all out swinging fists.
Yeah, it's pretty fun. I do enjoy it as well. Straight into the action, because last issue 2, if you recall, there wasn't too much action at all. It was more so an escape story for Mark to actually realise a lot of it was built fleshing out the Overvoid and the Other Void. So it's good to see that issue 3, you smack bang into the action again.
And just these, once again, we're just going to crazy Smallwood panel setup, and just the way it sort of adjusts from the first page of a very claustrophobic as the mummies get by to this very open page of Mark Spector getting the advantage as everyone piles straight into these mummies.
Yeah, no. So which page which layout were you looking there, Connor?
Well, you sort of open with almost just the first page is a series of, what is that?
Yeah, very, very cluttered, and 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 panels.
And then we open then to a double page spread of just an absolute all-out advantage as Gina, Frenchie, and Mr. Knight just start laying into these mummies.
You got the head being lopped off. You got an elbow to the upper to the jaw. And you got Mr. Moon Knight smashing 2 heads together into dust. So it's it's pretty action packed, and that actually brings it to actually my first aspect, which is the first time we see Dr. Emmett in her true visage, so to speak. So she's actually I'm going to pronounce it as Amut, which is the Soul Eater. And she is pretty much a crocodile or alligator with dreadlocks. And we have Billy and Bobby behind her, I'm assuming, the 2 right-hand people with a straight jacket and a syringe. But yeah, I found it was really good to finally see what was alluded to and what Mark was constantly referring it to in the lead up to this. We actually see that she is one of the gods, which has influenced, I'm assuming, the Good Doctor. But this is the spirit from the Overvoid, or the Other Void, that has taken or influenced Dr. M.
Yeah, and I think just the sort of massive size of her head and the very sort of stark red just makes her someone really threatening. You know, Mark gets the hidden, but just the way she sort of takes up panel space, it's just very clearly set up that she's not someone to be messed with.
Oh, definitely. The first time you see her, you're seeing her from a lower vantage point, looking up, and Crawley's looking up to her. So it's very much a powerful stand that she has. But what I love about that is that Mark just doesn't care about that. And you see the next page at the bottom, he just goes for it, and he hits her one. So you can see he's a lot more assured of himself. And he's no longer kind of the cowering or the confused inmate, or patient. He knows what he has to do, and he gets in. And another aspect that I have is shown on the next page, which is Khonshu. He actually guides them away from there. So Khonshu helps him out.
Yeah, it's sort of a very sort of continue on and building on the fact that Mark went from someone sort of very weak and scared in this asylum to someone now leading the pack. You know, he's got Khonshu's blessing again. He's ready to swing in and escape.
Yeah, and he's a lot more. It seems he's a lot more comfortable with that mask on like he's just a lot more sure of himself. And whenever he has that mask on, he kind of sees Khonshu for what he is. So yeah, so he basically he tells the crew, Crawley, Gina, and Co. To follow the tunnel where Khonshu was. But he gets into a spot of bother himself, doesn't
Yeah,
he?
and this leads into my next aspect, which is colors extraordinaire. Just in these first, what is about 10 pages, just how differently we switch from these very threatening dark blues and blacks to just complete black, and then we see the very lit up and sort of almost warm and safe use of what the illusion world where Umwut is Emmett and Billy and Bobby are just two orderlies.
That's a fantastic point, Connor. I'm just looking at it now. I'm flicking from basically page 7 to 8. You get the best sense of it. So page 7, he's in this dark world, is kind of saying, and they're leaving the tunnel, and then the moment he gets injected, I think Billy or Bobby injects him. Then he starts seeing the illusion, or what previously we thought was the reality, and the colours just shift totally. Everything's kind of lit up.
Yeah, and then immediately after that, you just go to straight black again with an appearance of Khonshu straight into this whole new color dynamic of the golden lit Egyptian temple.
Oh yes, yes, yeah, definitely. Just going back a couple though, I've got to shout out on page 10 as well. I just love that image. There's one that red is used, and it's just black and white of
Oh
Moonlight
yeah.
showing Khonshu. Really, really good. I think that's a poster-worthy image myself. But actually, before we go to that temple, I've just got to expand a little bit on my aspect with Khonshu, and this was my second aspect, which was basically how Khonshu saying, again we got Mark visiting Khonshu, and he's basically saying, "Let your insanity guide you." So what Mark gathers from this, and what I think is a small turning point as well, is that Mark will fully accept now that he will just go with the flow, go with this kind of craziness. I mean, he already kind of started to, but he was still a little unsure when he was drugged by Emmett and Billy and Bob not long ago. But Khonshu just says to him, "No, you got to stop fighting it. You got to give into it and let the insanity guide you." So I think that's when he kind of accepts all the craziness and the Golden Temple, as you mentioned, Connor.
His sort of craziness is defined by Moon Knight. He's scared and he's in the dark, so he takes the Mr. Knight mask off, and then once Khonshu reassures to let your insanity guide you, it's immediately putting the mask back on to get back into the fight of this Golden Temple.
Shortly after that, we think he's in trouble, but he bumps into his crew again. So Gina, Crawley, the unconscious Marlene, and Frenchie are there to greet him. And now this is how many aspects have I got so far? I had Amut, Khonshu's influence. This is the third aspect for me, which is probably a big one that you've got as well, Connor. But it looks like they're in just the edge of the other void.
Yeah, the other void's here to stay.
So brilliant colours again from Geordie Belair. So you've got the Golden Temple. You've got the people predominantly in white because they were in their patient uniform gear. And then you have the big expanse of the other void ahead of them. So they've got to figure out how to get across. And this is when they bump into
Anubis. Holy crap. Just there. Big and massive.
Yeah. So in a short space, we've got the three big players in the Egyptian mythology. We've got Khonshu that we've known for a long time. We've seen now Amut, who has possessed Dr. Emmett. And now we have Anubis, who to me is very similar to Styx, right? From, I think it's a Greek, or is it the Greek mythology, or is it Roman mythology?
I don't know that.
But is a river? It's a guy that guides you across the river, river of death. I think it's. Oh God, I'm terrible. I'm probably stuffing this all up, Looney. So apologies. But anyway, Anubis is here on what looks to be a bit of a bone raft, and he can actually take them across the other void.
But that comes with a price, which is something before even Anubis shows up that Marlene whispers in a drugged haze, which sort of suggests to me that she's been drugged to hide the fact she knows quite a bit more about this hallucinated world than anyone else.
Ah, oh, good point. Yeah, I didn't pick that. Yeah, that's yeah, definitely. Like she says, there will be a price, so she knows the procedure here. So yeah, they've obviously been trying to keep her under wraps so she doesn't give away too much. But no, that's a great point. So as you mentioned, there is a sacrifice that is needed, and that's willingly old Crawley put his hand up for that.
Yeah, big heroic moment, sacrificing himself to escape Billy and Bobby, taking himself for the soul to Anubis to let him cross.
Yeah, so he basically says, "Yep, quickly do it, let's go." And before Billy and Bobby can catch them, they jump on the bone raft and off they go. And then they reach what can only be the edge of the other void. Gina's still kind of throughout the whole thing. Gina's still kind of clued out with the whole thing. She with the other overvoid or the other void. She kind of goes, "Oh, is that a nightclub?" She kind of still sees. She saw the mummies as the wardens as well, so she's not completely kind of taken over. So it only seems to. Well, it seems to be Crawley definitely. Frenchie seems to believe in it, whether he sees it or not, I don't know. And Marlene has been revealed to. She knows what's happening. So Gina's the only one that really is not too sure. Basically, what's happening. I mean, if you're on a bone raft with Anubis and you're in some cosmic other void, I'd be a little kind of, I'd be querying what is real and what isn't. But anyway, so she sticks to her guns, and they have to leave Crawley behind, unfortunately, which is a little sad, I thought.
Yeah,
because he did so well and he kind of guided Mark. And as they go, I always thought it was, it is Gina. So she kind of gets a sense that they're nearly there at New York. She can smell it, right? So she says, "I can smell it." It's just on the other side of the sewer grate. So they climb up the ladder. There's a bit of sand that comes through, which, as a reader, you kind of think, okay, something's not totally right here. And as you mentioned, Connor, at the end, it reveals that there's still, pyramids, sand, and jackals in New York City. So we're kind of still back at square one. What were your thoughts at the end of this?
Yeah, this wasn't what I was expecting at all when it came to, they've seemed to have travelled so long compared to when just Mark at the start of this run in issue 1 just like climbed to the top of the building to visit New York. They've like climbed this, they've made their way through the other void to reach New York once again. And I thought it gives a weird validity that he still might be insane.
Yeah, that's what I think as well. Because, let me get this straight. The other void and the over void, it's kind of a little confusing at times, right? So the over void is what they just travel through, right? And is that where these beings like Anubis, and Amut and Khonshu, is that where they live?
Yeah, and then they have to enter vessels to exist in the real world. So obviously they've managed to cross over with, Earth and have now invaded it.
Okay, and then what's the other void? So when I saw the over void, sorry, there's the other void and the over void. So the other void, because they mention it, Looney listeners, it'll be great if you can drop in your 2 cents on this as well. So if we go back to page 18 and they reach the edge, right, and Mark says, "I don't know, not for certain, this place is at the other void." And then Gina says, "The over void? Isn't that a night?" So she actually has called it something else. Is that an error?
No, well, just to, as we've read ahead, I say people who are reading through it on the first time just catch on to that because that very much does get explored a little later on in this run. So, yeah.
Okay, I might have forgotten then.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Oh, well, I'm in for a fun ride again. Okay, but yeah. So essentially, at the end, it seems that they've come a long way, basically, to reach the same point. So now it's kind of a, is Mark still crazy? But what the big difference is here is that the other patients see it as well.
Yeah, because he even says, you still miss New York, Gina. That means she might even be seeing the whole messed up world now too.
Mm, yeah, definitely. It leaves you with a few questions, which is always good. Actually, I do remember what happens. I essentially know what happens at the end, and any of the listeners or the loonies that have read it, we're not. Yeah, I'm not going to spoil it anyway, but it does make a lot of sense at the end. But I'm just rereading it again now, like rereading issue 3. It kind of does leave you in a very confused state, in a good way.
Yeah, yeah, and it's kind of fun, forgetting that sort of stuff. It's still fresh in our mind as we're heading through it now.
Yeah, definitely. Oh, the amount of stuff that we read,
Yeah.
going back to something just a year old is like reliving it anyway. What would you rate this issue, Connor?
This issue, I think, is just a complete 5 out of 5. It's still kind of getting us to our destination before we hit maybe our 6 out of 5 crescent darts, but this one for sure, it's just this amazing full-on journey that we see these characters take, and it's this odyssey, and we're getting to a very big destination. The last, 2 issues before we hit a new arc. Well, sort of new arc in this book, as we'll see. But yeah, no, 5 out of 5. It's just flawless.
Yeah, it is a very good book. I'm gonna have to be harsh with myself with this because I've given the other ones high ones. This is still a really good issue. Like it's one of the must reads still. But comparing it to the first 2 as well. Look, I'll give it 4.5 then. 4.5 crescent darts out of 5. Basically because relative to say the previous issue, we got what I really enjoyed with the previous issue is that we got a whole lot from Khonshu about a bit more development about the other void and the overvoid, and I thought introducing that was fantastic. This pretty much runs with it. So there's not more. There isn't, apart from Anubis, there really isn't any more that is given. I mean, basically, you're given a lot of information in issues 1 and 2, and this kind of fleshes it out, and that's fantastic. But it's to me, it didn't seem as important as the other 2. So for that reason alone, I'd give it 4.5. But by no means is it a bad issue.
Yeah, well, I think that does us nicely. However, I want to make a point actually that when it came to we sort of seeing a more comedic writer on our new run, that this issue still does manage a bit of humor. I won't say anything out specifically, but if you read through it, there's a few points where it's actually set up for a bit of laughs.
From this issue?
Yeah, it's just it's very subtle stuff, whacked in the head, sort of.
Oh, yes, yeah, that's true. Yeah, there is a little bit of subtle humour there. Yeah, for sure. I have a feeling Bemis might be a bit more, a bit more obvious with it. But no, definitely, definitely. You can't say that Moon Knight issues have been without humour up until this point. There've always been a little bit of it in there. So yeah, no, definitely.
All right. Well, would you like to move on to our next issue?
All right. Well, so for our next issue, just to review, we said we'd do Marvel Fanfare number 30. This was issued in January 1987, so an older run. It was titled Real to Real, so REAL to REEL, and it had the creative team of Ann Nocenti as writer, which is great. Mm-hmm. And the credits actually are done cinematically, so I'm assuming Brent Eric Anderson is the penciler and Al Williamson is the inker. But they've been credited as, so written by Ann Nocenti, which obviously is a writer, directed by Brent Eric Anderson, and cinematography by Al Williamson. So I'm assuming that Brent Eric Anderson, the director, is the artist, and the cinematographer is the Inca. I'm actually familiar with Al Williamson as a penciler, so I'm not sure.
Okay.
Yeah. I think he did some Daredevil back in the day as well. But yeah, so anyway, those were the credits, and the cover is a really beautiful cover.
Yeah.
Actually, it's actually a what would you call it? A fold out or it wraps around to the back.
Yeah, wraparound cover. Yeah.
Wraparound, and it's look without spoiling too much. Before we get into the story, it's Moon Knight in looks like a dance pose, a balletic dance pose, with a woman who is green and looks very graceful. Yeah, and has a lot of foliage or leaves coming out of her, and they're dancing in space. So there's the moon, obviously, and there's Earth shown in it. It's very beautifully done. And it's been credited as Anderson 85 or 86. So yeah, so Brent Eric Anderson could well be the penciler for this, but he does the covers as well. Yeah, did you like the cover there, Connor?
Oh, I think it was gorgeous. I we'll go into it in a bit, but the whole issue is really gorgeous and probably like really stands out in that time. But yeah, just totally cosmic here too.
Totally cosmic, and it's one of those stories of the time, I think, which is really well pieced together. So anyway, it's title reel to reel, so there's a sense of there's some sort of cinematic angle to it. And as for a pitch, we have just outside the town of Kingdale, a film crew coldly kills some wildlife in the name of art. And then we cut to Mark and Marlene discussing Mark's personalities, as Mark seems to be leaning towards his Moon Knight persona, which kind of rubs Marlene up the wrong way. And this kind of ends up inevitably in a bit of an argument. So Mark goes out to his gym, as you do when you're a bit angry, and he does a bit of a workout. And as he does a workout, as the argument has kind of cooled down a bit, Marlene comes back to him, and she kind of lets it be known to him that there's this thing coming up called the syzygy quadrature, which is basically an elemental thing in which the moon's gravitational pull, I think, is stronger than usual. So Marlene's kind of warning Mark that she's concerned that since he is very much tied to the moon, that he might end up basically being crazier than he already is. So she comes up with a plan, okay, saying, let's get out of here. Let's drive away from New York City or from the Grant Mansion, and let's lay low until the syzygy quadrature is finished. So as they coincidentally head up towards Kingdale, where we previously saw the film crew kill these animals, they arrive in the town and they stay there, and they start to get settled in, and they start to see kind of weird stuff. They see it raining blood, so to speak, which the sheriff says, "Oh, look, it's just it's just the red clay kind of being, sucked up into the clouds," and he explains it quite scientifically. And they also see birds start to fall out from the sky. So what happens after that shortly is that they have basically another argument, in which case Marlene storms out, and Mark storms out in his Moon Knight costume into the woods, where he seems to see an illusion of what can only be, I think, Mother Nature. There's the green woman from the cover, so she's dancing around in the forest. Mark's kind of bedazzled by that. Anyway, the next day arrives, and Marlene arrives back after having shared a few drinks with the sheriff. Nothing is actually divulged as to what happened there, but she and Mark meet up, and they decide to drive back. So they drive back through Kingdale, and they notice that there's a bit of a riot happening, and they wonder, okay, well, what's happening here? Basically, Mark's illusion is real, and this Mother Nature persona is basically terrorizing the town. So that is good in the sense that coincidentally, the film crew are still there to capture it all, so they're kind of rolling as well, And we have to remember that the film crew are pretty brutal towards Mother Nature, i.e., killing the deers at the beginning. So anyway, Mark or Moon Knight has a tussle with Mother Nature as well as Marlene, and Moon Knight eventually convinces Mother Nature that that man essentially is a conflicted bunch by letting her see his personalities or his mind, in which Mother Nature says, well, she basically seems to agree to it and disappears. The story wraps up with Moon Knight and Marlene kissing and making up, and conveniently the director is kind of shown the door by the townsfolk, so he has to pay for what he did to Mother Nature. And that's it.
So yeah, Ray, would you like to start us with your first aspect?
A very interesting story and I thought, very well told. And the first thing that I thought was quite interesting was Mark versus Marlene. I found their discussions at the beginning and throughout quite interesting. It really gave an insight to both Mark and how Marlene is trying to accept Mark for what he is at the moment, i.e. having the split personalities. She talks about, are you Stephen? Are you Jake? Who are you? And Mark kind of counters with, oh, you only like Stephen because he's a millionaire. And Marlene's got, no, I don't like him the most. He's actually the most phony of all. So she's a lot more savvy to his personalities, than I think that Mark thinks of her. But yeah, I found that a very interesting point.
Yeah, this was my first aspect as well. As starts off with a bit of a lover's spat, and this whole issue is sort of very much about they're sort of coming together and realize, and the sort of lover's tale of being together, being split apart, and finding comfort in each other's arms at the end.
Yeah. And look, and there's a bit of a Marlene nudie alert again.
Yeah.
You'll have to go to page 8, and she's in bed. Look, Mark's in his budgie smugglers as well, so they've obviously he's woken up in the middle of the night. But I find Marlene quite, although they do have an argument, I think she's the more accepting one.
Yeah.
Like Mark is talking about, what do you want me to do about my personalities? You want me to merge them? Like, and he cites a case by some psychiatrist and he gives a story about how a pianist had the same problem, but they merged it and he lost his ability, to play the piano. So he's saying, is this what you want to do to me? Are you going to basically neuter me by merging my personalities? And Marlene's going, no, well, just don't run away. I'll take any of them. So she's kind of more willing, and I think it makes Mark look like a bit of a dick more at the beginning.
Yeah, that was my sort of opening point as well. That Stephen Grant here is a bit of a dick.
Yeah, definitely. Well, how about your second aspect, Connor?
Well, my second aspect is that this came out at an interesting time. So actually, the Moonshine had finished, and Fist of Khonshu had actually been cancelled about 2 years prior, a year prior.
Okay.
So yeah, this was the weird in between where Moon Knight didn't actually have a run between Fist of Khonshu and Mark Spector Moon Knight.
Yeah, right. So it's like Marvel kind of still stoking the fires after Moon Knight's been cancelled, kind of still keeping him there, not with his own title, but I guess it proves that he's still popular enough, although the title didn't work, that Marvel gave enough faith to have him feature in a Marvel Fanfare issue. Yeah,
and this sort of makes an interesting look at when we actually moved into Mark Spector Moon Knight a few years later, that it's almost the dying down of the other personalities, and Marlene and Mark sort of settling down, because that Mark Spector Moon Knight run didn't really have a focus on the split personalities as much.
It didn't at all. No, it was almost it was almost like you can look at it like a 90s action film. It was just all action. It was great. It was a lot of fun. And then it had him cross over with other characters in the Marvel universe. Punisher popped up a few times, but yeah, it really didn't. I can't even recall seeing Jake Lockley anywhere.
Oh wow, he's my favorite.
It was very much focused on his mercenary days. Actually, the first few issues were very much him and Bushman. Yeah, so it didn't delve in it at all. So this is a nice little piece that came just before it. I really do think it explores his personalities all that more. It still makes him look loopy as well. It follows up with, well, I won't get into it yet, but my next aspect was the syzygy quadrature, which I found was quite interesting. I didn't have time to look it up. I'm not sure if you had too, Connor, but I'm wondering if it's a real thing. Do you know?
Yeah, I actually didn't give it any thought. I just assumed it was fake.
Yeah. I mean, it's got such a corny name. But anyway, so when the moon I thought that was a nice twist that Nocenti put in the writing, that there's these times in the year or where the moon actually is stronger than usual, and how that affects Moon Knight. And I thought that was really great to use that as a tool for him, but also to use it as a tool for other people's actions, like the population of Kingdale, or even the film crew, of killing those animals. I found
it sort of almost brought back the supernatural aspect a bit. That the moon had an effect on him, which was interesting.
And your next aspect, Connor?
My next aspect was actually, I'll just talk about the art. I'll get into my next aspect as we move through the thing, but I just think it's absolutely just wonderful. I think both art and coloring. The coloring's so important when we're moving from the grey urban structures to the blue light of the moon, and the luscious wildlife and the way it contrasts dramatic scenes and everything. And and the art is really well detailed. It has some great backgrounds. Those first opening shots as you move into the wild are just so vivid and alive.
Yeah, they are really good, aren't they? I always find it amazing how artists can depict animals. I find that, because everyone's got an idea of how animals look, right? Or, how they should look. And, you can kind of relax that with humans, so to speak, because we kind of accept that they look cartoonish or whatever. But with animals, they've got to kind of look like animals, don't you? Otherwise, they look like Looney Tunes animals. And and it's done so well, like in these opening pages, like the movements of the deer and them running away. I think it's great, and I agree with you that the colours are brilliant. The art is very, very classic, which I think is cool. The layouts are very classic. I do love the depiction of movement. So you got Mark in the gym, and he does a backflip, and there's like 10 of him, frame by frame. And what he does, I don't know if you see, it's very much like a ballet move. You see, it's quite graceful.
Representative of the cover almost. He's sort of
yeah, definitely, and it actually shows his prowess and how agile he is. Remember, he's meant to be like a heavyweight boxer as well. So this is a big dude. But he can still, do the rings, do the gymnastics. The art's great. So going on to that supernatural aspect, that was coming up to my third point, which was, what was your other aspect, Connor, apart from the art?
My first one was that it was the trouble in the bedroom, and then my second one was the colours. So I'll let you go on to your third.
Okay. The third one for me was obviously, I think the big one with Mother Nature. I don't even know if she has a name, but the Green Woman in the forest. I think as a very interesting, a very supernatural character that Nocenti is introduced. So you see when Mark first finds her, he's a bit nuts. He's actually looking at the moon, throwing his arms up in the air, and talking to Khonshu. So he's actually nuts. This was after his second argument with Marlene, and so he's in costume because he feels like he has to be in costume. He's wandering around this very different environment. He's not in the city anymore. He and Marlene are out in the sticks, basically. So Actually, as an aside, that's a really a nice thing that I liked. I liked about this issue that they were kind of out of their element. But anyway, he's very much closer to nature, and he sees this thing, this Mother Nature creature, Earth creature appear, and I found her quite interesting, like how she was pretty much the it must be the avatar of the Earth, basically, and not being happy with what's being done to the Earth, i.e., the film crew killing the animals and basically being bad to Mother Nature. So she sprung out of that, and I found it's a very interesting character. She's not good or she's not bad.
Yeah,
Well,
she's just
a representative of Earth. Yeah. What was your third aspect there?
Actually, that leads very nicely onto mine. That the first thing I thought when we got to that elemental, that it felt like a very classic Alan Moore Swamp Thing story.
Ah, very nice.
The effect humans had on nature, especially in those early issues of that run, and then sort of the pure force of nature making a representation. It was interesting to see here in almost like a new light under the moon. Hey boys, get amongst it. I actually like the story. I actually wasn't very on board the first read. I didn't like the issue that much, and then I sort of reread it, and I think I like it a lot more, especially that as we got to the end of the issues, you're talking about the elemental wasn't good or evil, and Marlene sort of talking about how it was just like the force of nature. That's all nature was.
Yeah, it was a very very interesting take. It's very almost a nice little environmental message as well in on this, which is pretty cool. So that my only other aspect as I mentioned in the pitch, what happens eventually, but my other aspect was Marlene and the sheriff. I'm just kind of wondering what happened there because it's never explained. If we go back to it, so she storms off after their argument, and he basically tries to pick her up, and he says, where's your boyfriend? And she goes, what makes you think we're not married? And he goes, well, you haven't got your ring on your finger. And then he says, well, then let's drink a few and get to know each other. Sound good to you? And then there's a silent panel of her look. And then the barkeep saying, what'll it be, miss? And then the next time you see her, it's the next day. And she said, I didn't hear you come home last night, Mark. But, where was she? So anyway, I just thought that was pretty funny. Just it kind of was left up in the air. But that was my fourth aspect.
And meanwhile, while that happened, Mark was off facing nature women in the forest.
Yeah.
It's a weird issue.
It is a weird issue. I get distracted a bit. I very much enjoyed it, but that kind of just threw me a bit. Like, oh, Marlene, what's happening there? Because she does seem very faithful to Mark. So she even brings him a sandwich earlier on as well. Yeah, even after they've kind of argued and stuff, she still kind of wants to take care of him and be with him. So I found that kind of outside her character. But then again, nothing is kind of revealed, so she could have easily just gone home. You never know. What was your fourth aspect, Connor?
Actually, I accidentally covered it a bit earlier on with like the positioning of this issue when it came when it came out. And it was just sort of an added point of these characters like almost feel almost entirely different from the way we sort of saw in the Munch run, and it was not entirely different, but you can't really jump from one issue to this issue and feel sort of 100% along the same line. So I'd be interested to see actually read Mark Spector Moon Knight and see maybe whether this and some issues that came out between Fist of Contra and Mark Spector had play in this sort of when it came to that run.
It's very different. Moon Knight is a very, I think, is a very hard character to write for. Both as in there was a question in the Facebook group as well of do you like Moon Knight as solo or as part of a team? And I responded, I thought like as part of a team he's very hard to write for because the focus is not on him and there's a lot to him. So if you don't write about him properly, he just comes across as, just this dude that really has no superpowers. But As a solo title, I think it's also kind of hard to write for him as well because you really got to latch onto one pardon the pun aspect of him, um, and just go with that, rather than try and cover everything of him. And I think that's why he's so different in all the runs, because I think writers just go, okay, well, I'm just going to focus on him being the mercenary, which was like Mark Spector. And in this one, it was very much his personality. So it's actually his personality that saved the day, because he asked the Earth creature to read his mind and show her that he's got conflict within him. Like his personalities alone show conflict, and that's enough to convince her that that mankind is this sort of being, and she just leaves, like, accepting that. But yeah, it would be very interesting, I think, to see exactly what you said.
Yeah. I suppose that is sort of the thing, having to write this in, what was this, about 30 pages?
Yeah.
And just having to establish Moon Knight and write a story about it, it's pretty impressive. Especially considering Ann Nocenti. I don't think she's done any other Moon Knight work. I know her well from her classic Daredevil run that introduced Typhoid Mary.
Oh yes, a favourite of many of us. Yeah, no, definitely. I only know her from Daredevil. I'm not sure if she's done anything of Moon Knight other than these non-Moon Knight titles like Marvel Fanfare. I'm not too sure, but pretty good issue. What would you rate this one, Connor?
This one's a tough one for me, and I'm still not 100% sure how I feel.
Mm-hmm.
I think I like some parts of it and dislike others. I think this one sort of didn't quite grasp what I liked about Moon Knight as a hero so much. I don't think, like, him being seen in the suit, he was really sort of written and kind of scatterbrained, which may be a part of the issue. But yeah, I think it's definitely one everyone should read, especially just sort of its position in the timeline. And I did like some of the especially like the character building between Marlene and Mark. There's some nice quiet moments here, on like a swing in the wild that goes crazy.
Yeah, that's right.
And all these other stuff. But yeah, I don't think it'd ever be an overly favourite, so I'd probably give it a 3 out of 5 crescent darts.
Okay, 3 out of 5 crescent darts. I'm just thinking of our previous review last episode, which was the Marvel Team Up Annual number 4. I think I gave that 3. Look, for this one, I'd give it. It is a hard one, exactly as you say as well. I'd probably give it. I'm going to try to be different, so I'll go 3.5 crescent darts out of 5. I'd give it a little bit more over the Marvel Team Up Annual number 4,
true.
Only because I really do love the fleshing out of the characters of Marlene and Mark. So it gets more into that. Weighing that up against seeing Spider-Man and Luke Cage and Iron Fist with Moon Knight, which is also pretty good. But I just think I like getting into that stuff about the characters. So I really enjoyed that. And I liked how Nocenti actually ties Mother Nature, the whole environmental thing, with both the film crew, but also using Mark's personalities basically as the catalyst for her to accept mankind's cruelty. To me, I found it a lot more complex than the Marvel Team Up Annual. For that reason, I'll give it a little bit more, 3.5. 3.5, but a good read, and definitely if you can track it down, do it. So yeah, so that wraps up our other issue review. There. So Loonies, if you can, if you got any thoughts of these 2 issues as well, it's not too late. Or just always post them up on our Facebook page, Facebook group, or drop us a line in the Looney bin. We're always out and about there somewhere. But yeah, these 2 issues were a lot of fun.
So yeah, we had a question from a listener, actually a bit back. I think this was almost 2 weeks ago on our sort of behest by Jimmy Gilligan, who asked us sort of, if someone who's only read the Houston and Ellis run, what are some of the essential runs, and we sort of took that and asked and sort of made a question out of it being what are probably the 4 issues you'd give to someone to get into Moon Knight?
And for the magic number 4, we thought it would be good. 4 aspects of Moon Knight, 4 personalities of Mark Spector. So why not 4 issues for a recommended reading list? I'll let you go first, Connor. What do you reckon? What was your first one?
All right, I think a good origin story always works. So I was thinking Moon Knight Volume 1, Issue 1, just classic.
Very good. Yes.
I think I think the origin issue in the desert's pretty important, but I really like the stuff with Bushman in the end as well. I think that sets up him nicely as a villain that'll always be throughout Moon Knight's history, and that sort of tail end of it, I think, is probably one of the more important things. But yeah, you can't go wrong with an origin story.
Yeah, and I think actually that issue is oh, by the way, Loonies as well. Connor and myself, we both don't know what each other has on our list, so it's quite cool to listen to Connor's list as well. But definitely, Connor, that first issue is great, and what I do like about that is it's not only the origin issue as well. Like there's also a bit of space to flesh out a bit of a story, a bit of an exciting action tale as well. So we kind of get both things in that issue, which I think is jam packed, and which I think in the older days of the 80s, their writing, they managed to cram so much in, like I find, which is really good. So yeah, no, top pick there. So is it James? James who requested it?
Jimmy Gilligan.
Jimmy Gilligan. So Jimmy,
get your head in the game, Ray.
Yes, sorry. Apologies, Jimmy. Far out. I should remember these things. Connor's a details man. So, but definitely, Volume 1, Issue 1. Check that one out for sure. My first one, I do delve into the classic run as well. Mine's a little later than that, so it was released March 1st, 1981. It's Moon Knight Volume 1, Issue 5, and for me that was a one-shot, and it was a really good one because it had the bit of the supernatural in it, but what eventually ended up not being supernatural at all. To me, it reminded me of classics like Texas Chainsaw Massacre, and all those horror kind of aspects, and it's basically Moon Knight at first scaring some kids because they go to what seems to be a haunted house. But anyway, there's much more to it. There's some freakish family stuff going on with a loopy mother and a loopy son, and her dead husband. So it's a really freaky tale. So Jimmy, I definitely recommend you issue 5 of Moon Knight Volume 1.
Yeah, well, actually, I couldn't agree more. I think a lot of this 80s run is sort of, well, they're almost all sort of anthology. There's a few arcs in there, but no more than 2 to 3 issues, and yeah. I think probably actually that's to be one of my highlights. The 2 to 5, 2 to 4, sorry, are all sort of tie in like that. But that's probably one of my earlier favorites and sets up the supernatural nicely. All the previous were sort of these one-off villains that you don't kind of see again, but this one sort of set up a supernatural feeling that continued into the rest of the run.
Yeah, really. Yeah, true. And the scary thing about it was that there wasn't really a supernatural thing at the end, and it's just well, anyway, I won't spoil it, but it's a different kind of horror. So definitely worth a check out. What's your second on your reading list?
Incredibly crazy supernatural issue with I should nearly messed up his name. With Morpheus. It's sort of Morpheus had been chasing along Mark, and in this issue culminated into a battle in and outside the mansion that took Moon Knight to the edge of his sanity and his fight here. And I think a good thing always about doing a hero is the most important part is breaking them down to their key aspect, and this was sort of Moon Knight just on his own. Well, not on his own, but trying to fend off Morpheus as he tries to protect his family with Marlene and Frenchie. And I think it just has all sort of the key aspects. It's got Moon Knight is a very sort of tortured soul. It's got a classic villain like Morpheus, supernatural. It's got it very much shows his love for his family and stuff. It's just amazing. It's just sort of this crazy evolution.
Yeah, and that's sorry, you say that was Sinkovich as well, yeah?
Yeah, and you compare it to those first issues and see this one. It's just mind blowing.
Oh, awesome! Oh, and that's the so I'm just pulling it up now. That's the classic cover as well.
Yes, yeah, the one that you see on the Essential, and you actually saw in issue 1 of the Lemire run.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Morpheus is a really cool villain, I think, as well. I think we've touched upon him, and Connor, we've got to do a spotlight, I think, on Morpheus. I reckon that's probably one of the first character spotlights we do on this. But yeah, let's get into him a bit later. But I like it that he's actually quite powerful as well. He and Moon Knight just doesn't take a backward step. So he's very freaky because he's a bit like Freddy Krueger, isn't he? Like he does the whole dream thing.
Yeah.
And not only that, he can shoot ebon energy from his eyes, and he seems to be quite resilient. So yeah, that's a good pick there, Connor.
Yours next?
Yeah, I have. Look, I've just written this. I've just written this down, but I'm gonna try to put them in chronological. So so my next one would be from the Mark Spector Moon Knight series, which can either be seen as a standalone volume or volume 3. I've seen it referenced as as both. So anyway, Mark Spector Moon Knight number 35. So this was issued in February 1992. And this basically is part 1 of Blood Brothers, which has a return of Randall Spector. If you thought Mark was crazy, Mark's brother Randall is he's friggin' off. He's the looniest of them all. And anyway, Mark's brother Randall teams up with a really weird cult led by Queen Nephis, I think. And anyway, it also introduces the Punisher in there as well. So it's the first part of this Blood Brothers. I think it's a good pick because, just between you and me, Jimmy, this is one of them, but get the other issues as well. But it's got Moon Knight fighting Punisher as well. They don't see eye to eye in everything. But I also just love Randall Spector. He's just a totally crazed, hatchet-wielding villain, which makes him actually, for me, he's probably one of the scariest villains of Moon Knight. And this is a good one to actually get introduced to him. So I'd recommend issue 35 of Mark Spector Moon Knight. Conrad, have you got your third one?
I sure do. I think it's probably one of the more celebrated one-offs in recent years, and not just Moon Knight, but comics in general. But this is 2014's Ellis run with Moon Knight number 5, a absolutely crazy action piece inside a decaying building to save a girl. And it's just been probably one of the most celebrated just action comics. But I think it's important for anyone getting into Moon Knight because it actually has. You sort of see the character of Mr. Knight flourish here.
Mm-hmm.
I think, in the action you see Mr. Knight as a character, where in the previous 2 issues you see Mark and Moon Knight. This issue is like this whole new character of Mr. Knight within Mark's head sort of gets fleshed out here, and you just sort of see his heroic deeds and his almost unhinged nature to completely beat up this entire floor of people.
Yeah, it's so this is a prime example of there being so many issues. I'm kicking myself for not picking that one, but it did kind of I did kind of miss that one. But that is definitely a fantastic issue, Jimmy. It's very cinematic as well. Reminds me of reminds me of Dredd actually for some reason because of the tenement. As Moon Knight goes up the floors, but it's just action packed all the way. And if you want to see how comics should be laid out, then Jimmy, you should be picking up that issue straight away. That is that's a goal. That's a 5 crescent darts for me for that one. So good pick, Connor. I'm in that similar kind of era as well now for my. I'll jump to it anyway because it's kind of near it. May 20th, 2015. This is a Cullen Bunn Moon Knight run, which came shortly after Ellis's. It's Moon Knight number 15, and this is when Moon Knight tackles the boogeyman. So I love the supernatural element to it. It's quite a violent tale. It opens up with Moon Knight basically crawling in his own pool of blood, totally beaten. And anyway, he's got to fight this boogeyman, which has been terrorizing and I think killing children. It's awesome. So it's got a bit of Khonshu in there as well. But essentially, it's Moon Knight with guns. So Jimmy, if you want to see Moon Knight take on a monster with guns as Mr. Knight, then this is just a rip rollicking issue for you. So yeah, I'd give that one a good one as well.
All right, so my fourth one is the only one that isn't sort of an anthology, but the start to possibly my favorite Moon Knight run ever, and that's issue 1 of the Jeff Lemire run. Because just as a one issue, you read that and you just don't want to put it down. You'll be there for the rest of the run. I think it's, as you dive into that one, it almost condenses the world of Moon Knight into just one issue that you see all the moving parts, and then you get to explore that as you become more of a Moon Knight reader and a fan, and it's just perfect.
Yeah. Again, a great pick as well, and I'm so glad that for our episode 1, Connor, that we actually did a full panel by panel review of that. It definitely is justified. It's a fantastic issue, Jimmy. So if you haven't listened to episode 1 as well, please check it out and give it a listen. Grab yourself a copy on Marvel Unlimited, or even buy yourself a copy on Comixology or something. It is a fantastic tale, well paced, and Lemire just doesn't let up. So we've just had a look at issue 3, and it's still right up there. So definitely check out issue 1. My final one, I jump again to 2007 in December, and this was Moon Knight number 13. So this was part of the Houston run, I believe. Let me just double check, and it has all to do with Moon Knight getting registered on the Superhero Registration Act. And I picked this. I thought this was a great. This is written by Houston. So just looking now, written by Houston and penciled by Tom Coker. And this is a really good issue in the fact that you get a sense of Mark's craziness. I think essentially, there's a story that goes around it of Mark being registered or not, but there's a scene in it when Mark is evaluated by this psychiatrist. And what I found kind of really disturbing was that you see him flick between personalities, and it just gives you a real sense of how crazy and unhinged Mark can be. And anyway, what essentially happens is that he fools the psychiatrist into thinking that that he really is possessed by this spirit of Khonshu, and I won't divulge too much, but he convinces the psychiatrist to give him a full a clear bill of health and get him registered on the registration as a registered hero. So that's I found that a really cool issue. If you want to see Mark's personalities conflict, and if you want to just see Mark in a lot more of a realistic view, it also goes into him how he brands his criminals that he catches with crescent moons on their foreheads. So it's pretty dark, but definitely worth checking out, Jimmy. So if you haven't read much around Civil War, the arc, or if you want to, then definitely pick this up as a companion piece. It's really good.
And I think just generally, we gave you a nice, 8 distinct issues for everyone to jump into. But if you're wondering sort of in general, the entire sort of runs of Moon Knight that you can explore from there, sort of the ones I think Ray and I can both recommend on reading is Moon Knight Volume 1,
Mm-hmm.
Mark Spector Moon Knight, the Houston Benson Moon Knight run, Bender to the Moon Knight. Maybe check out the Bendis run.
Yeah, why not? I
Yeah.
know I know there are a lot of haters for Bendis in our Facebook group, but I'm always of the opinion just check it out, see if you like it. If you don't, you don't. But he definitely has his lovers and haters. So yeah.
Then we've got the 2014 Ellis Wood Bun run, and then the current Lemire one that will soon be the current Bemis run, which we'll add
Yes.
in the show notes. But yeah, I think if you're new to Moon Knight, just anyone who hasn't explored that much, just read the issues you haven't read out of those 8, and you'll be fairly on board. Or just introduce someone you know who hasn't read any Moon Knight.
Yeah, definitely. I think that's a good. It's a good canvas of what Moon Knight can be in the 8 recommendations that we've given you. So, so not only Jimmy but everyone else, if you check it out, or if you haven't already, give it a go. He's definitely a hero worth looking into. So anyway, Connor, that almost wraps us up.
Yeah.
We've only got a couple of things to cover. Just I wanted to get your thoughts. You just told me off air as well that you're up to episode 7 of The Defenders. Yeah, how are you liking it?
Oh, I'm loving it. I think it's probably what will be most interesting to anyone who hasn't picked it up. Obviously, no spoilers.
Yeah,
but,
no spoilers. Yep.
It's quite a differently paced start to something that you'd expect to be incredibly explosive, but just the way it tackles it's fairly interesting. I'm loving it. I think if you've been along for the ride since the first episode of Daredevil season 1, this just sort of wraps up this sort of first phase of the Netflix series is so tightly in a bow. It's just
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think after episode 1, which is a great setup episode, and there are only 8 episodes. I don't think it doesn't let go. After episode 2 onwards, I'm only up to I've got to watch episode 6, 7, and 8. But I'm loving it at the moment. I haven't picked up any any Easter eggs, any Moon Knight Easter eggs there. I don't know if you've seen any, Connor.
nah. We have never been that lucky.
No, I'm gonna hopefully. I'm gonna hopefully finish off the series, and then I'm gonna dedicate Monday tomorrow to editing this, but also I'm going to rewatch the whole thing again. So I'm going to cast my eye over again and see if I can desperately find any clues whatsoever. So yeah, Defenders is out now on Netflix. Go check it out if you haven't. Street level characters, we all support the street level characters. We love our Moon Knight, but we also love all the others as well. So definitely give it a go. All right, so in wrapping, as we mentioned before, next week we'll cover Lemire's issue 4 and also Invincible Iron Man number 161. So keep your eyes out on the Facebook group page, and if you haven't subscribed to us yet on our website, please do, and you'll get a newsletter with the reading list over the moon with those 2 issues, and if you want, just pick them up and drop us a line as to what you think, what you think of those 2 issues. Where can they find us, Connor?
Well, you can find us in our most beloved group with members coming every day. It's just filled with Moon Knight activity and discussion. Into the night, a Moon Knight fan base. Just look us up. We'll be right there on Facebook. Get you in there. You can find us on Twitter at ITK Moon Knight. Our email, moonknightpodcast@gmail.com. If you found us here, we're intothenightpodcast.wordpress.com. We're also on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, Overcast, TuneIn, and Podbean.
Yeah, we're on all your popular podcatchers. So please, give us a go and join our group. And we're more than happy to talk to you as well. Just to finish off, Connor, I thought, why not? We had someone on the group post up, Steve. He posted up the big news that came, what we covered just at the beginning of this podcast, and we got a few comments from some of the loonies. So we had largely all positive comments from them. I wanted to just touch upon what's his name? Sorry, Tommy. So Tommy said about it, he said, the Eye of Horus on the release cover may be a big clue. The symbol is loosely associated with Bast, cat goddess, who is sometimes Khonshu's mother, sister, or consort. Maybe Moon Knight's new arch-nemesis is a relative of the Overvoid. Child of Bast becomes the living aspect or Wrath, or whatever Bast represents. So I thought that was a really great take on it, which we've discussed earlier today. Also, we had Sandy, who actually hosts Moonlight Life on Instagram. Fantastic page, which you should check out. He's posted, what a day, new Moon Knight series and a tag by the incredible Alex Ross. So he's loving, or he's getting a lot of the Moonlight love. We also have Nick has said, I don't quite know if I trust this writer. So there's, not everyone's on board. A few people are hesitant. Look, Nick, I reckon definitely give it a go. We'll know by 188 and 189 if it's any good. But yeah, look, as Connor and I have mentioned, we're both excited to see something happen. And finally, Daniel says he's so excited. It seems like this creative team will rock. And I cannot agree more. Are there any other ones out there, Connor, that you're keen on? Or
I think you've covered them very nicely. I think there's just a general feeling of great positivity here. And if anyone on the fence, don't worry, we'll be covering this issue without a doubt. So you can expect to hear our opinions on whether you want to get it yourself.
Yep, definitely. All right, well, we'll leave you to it, Loonies. Please stay good to yourself, and as we say, Connor.
Well, I mean, as we say, I've probably done it 70 different times over these last 3 episodes, but may Khonshu look after the denizens of the night. See you, everyone.
Catch you later. See ya.
Moon Knight and affiliated characters, stories and events are properties of Marvel Characters Incorporated. Materials used and discussed within the podcast are intended for critique and review purposes only under the fair dealing concept of the current Copyright Act. The views, information, or opinions expressed during the podcast are solely those of the individuals involved and do not necessarily represent those of the copyright owners.